Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from the Frontier. Thank you as always for stopping by. You know, I wrote a piece on the 22nd of May called Apocalypse Trump. And I said then we're living in an unprecedented moment, was my final sentence. The euro has soared above 120 for the first time in more than 2 years. We're at 120.60 right now. I put in brackets, WOA. Dollar index, I saw a tweet from Imhotep 256. Do or die. We're at a big precipice right here. And going back to that piece I wrote on the 22nd of May, if we are headed to an apocalypse Trump, I said, then I'm afraid the dollar has a lot further to fall and the yen and gold have a lot further to go. That was 22nd of May. Gold has now rallied to its highest level this year after North Korea's missile launch boosts demand for havens. This is a big breakout. We are at 1325, a breach of which signals we're going to 1350. Gold rallied to the highest level this year after North Korea fired a ballistic missile over Japan, boosting demand for havens amid escalating tensions between Pyongyang and the US and its allies. Bullion at that point gained as much as 0.9% to 1322. We're now at 1325. As investors weighed the possibility of conflict in Asia, with Kim Jong-un's regime pushing on with missile tests, and US President Donald Trump vowing a stern response, the precious metal has also climbed, as the Federal Reserve is expected to go slow on further interest rate increases, weakening the dollar. 18th of April, when gold came up to these sorts of levels, just below 1300, I said gold has the potential to go nuclear. The purest geopolitical proxy in the markets is gold. As Ben Bernanke once said, people hold gold as protection against what we call tail risks, really bad outcomes. So we've got a lot going on there, need to keep an eye on that situation. But this is a significant move. Home thoughts, I love this Paul Kagame comment to the Financial Times. Some are short, others are tall, others are thin, others are stocky. Are we not all human beings? Mr. Steinmetz, who's this extraordinary photographer, says, I don't fly without a camera. I'm a photographer who flies. I am not a pilot who takes pictures. Have a look at these pictures of his. At twilight, Manhattan resembles a vast living organism with ribbons of energy pulsing through its streets and up into its 100,000 buildings. And another one, George Steinmetz takes a helicopter ride to Vogue's new digs. I learned this: a child born in Japan in 2007 will have a more than 50% chance of living past the age of 107. That's worth thinking about. The 5 boys, the Masai Mara cheetahs, take a look at them. We came across this posse in the Mara when we visited recently, but they were in the shade and I couldn't really get a good photograph. This is a tremendous one. Very unusual to have 5, and obviously operating as a group, they can take down pretty much anything. They've taken down a buffalo when we got there. Australian Aboriginal artist Lung Kunan started painting at 95, pictured exhibiting her work age 105. Political reflections, well, South Korea says North Korean missile flew 2,700 kilometers over Japan and reached an altitude of 550 kilometers. Ballistic overflight is a violation of Japan's airspace and their sovereignty. It is a damn serious offense. So it's clearly an escalation, and that's why we saw such a dramatic response in the markets. I go back to Thomas Pynchon's Gravity's Rainbow, where he's talking about rockets. But it is a curve each of them feels unmistakably. It is the parabola they must have guessed once or twice. Guessed and refused to believe that everything, always, collectively, had been moving toward that purified shape latent in the sky. That shape of no surprise, no second chance, no return. Yet they do move forever under it, reserved for its own black and white. Bad news certainly, as if it were the rainbow and they its children. Assad said, so we got to watch that situation. This is an escalation for sure. Assad has won, says former US ambassador to Syria Robert Ford, who did a lot to try and topple him. Question, every time we've talked about Syria in the last year, the Assad regime would be making more gains. Where do you see the war now? Has the regime prevailed? Yes, the war is winding down little by little. Assad has won and he will stay in power. He may never be held accountable and Iran will be in Syria to stay. This is the new reality that we have to accept. There isn't much we can do about it. So you're saying the rebels have basically lost and have no chance of coming back? Unless the foreign governments that in the past have backed elements of the Free Syrian Army are prepared to send money, weapons including surface-to-air missiles, and provide the kind of military advisors that the Syrian Democratic Forces are receiving against ISIL, it would be impossible for the rebels to defeat Assad and his Russian and Iranian allies. And even if those governments did that, it would be a long war that probably ends in a stalemate instead of an Assad victory. He's correct. It was at a tremendous cost, but that regime was fighting for its life, and it was a manufactured revolution like it was in Libya. Netanyahu vows to never remove Israeli settlements from the West Bank. We're here to stay forever. Jared Kushner's Middle East peace push is going nowhere. That's why Israelis love it, says the Daily Beast. Harvey may be among the world's costliest recent catastrophes. It's extraordinary, practically biblical. Hurricane Harvey leaves some cows stranded in floodwater. Mexico has offered to send aid to Texas for the devastation from Hurricane Harvey, says Axios. And I tweeted, EPN makes a twat out of POTUS. The word twat is widely used as a derogatory epithet, especially in British English, referring to a person considered obnoxious or stupid. The only thing predictable about his foreign policy is that he says to the world, I'm going to be unpredictable. Freelance journalist Christopher Allen has been killed whilst reporting in southern Sudan. He was just 25. Here are some of his photos from Jake Hanrahan. Powerful photography. China's action in Asia risks undermining trust, says the US Navy. Gabrielson, commander of the logistics group Western Pacific, said nations should not seek to undermine the existing system through unilateral actions. Without naming a particular country, he later said China, which has turned reclaimed reefs in the disputed South China Sea into military outposts, was proceeding with a long-term plan for the region. And this is what I was writing about over the weekend in my piece, China Rising. And I said China's parabolic rise has been simply breathtaking, and apart from a few half-hearted and timid FONOPS, freedom of navigation operations, China has established control over the South China Sea. The horse has bolted. A murky compromise in the high Himalayas comes just in time for the BRICS powwow. But make no mistake, President Xi Jinping was goading Narendra Modi. And Narendra Modi, notwithstanding how it's been reported, has had to back down. Let's move on to the currency markets. Wowee, the euro pushed through 120, blew through it. It's just blown through 120.55. Last trading 120.57. This is a January 2015 high. Dollar index at 91.58 when I checked last. That's crashed. You remember I kept talking about that important level. We lost it and we've just given up. Japanese yen 108.45, Swiss franc 0.9495, the pound is at 129.66. What a stunning recovery there. Aussie, that's pushed on to 0.7962, Indian rupee 64.025. South Korean won a little bit weaker at 1126.90. As you'd expect, the Rial 316.76, Egyptian pound 17.658, and the South African Rand at 13.0702. These are very big moves in the FX markets, and I think we've now got total disillusionment with the US administration and also increased geopolitical risk. Amazon's opening salvo in a grocery war hits credit markets. It's an amazing fact. Just their arrival, their presence has trashed the share prices of their competitors, weakened them terribly. The moves underscore both Amazon's massive influence on retail markets and the fragility of a sector known for razor-thin profit margins. The company said it will begin cutting prices on a broad cross-section of Whole Foods groceries Monday, the same day the $13.7 billion deal is set to close. Here are some of the bonds that were worst hit by the news. The Fresh Market Inc.'s $800 million of bonds due 2023 slumped $3.13 on the dollar last week to a record low of $77.89. Albertson Company's $1.2 billion of bonds due in 2025 jumped 28 basis points. B&G Food Inc.'s $500 million worth of bonds due in 2025 climbed 4 basis points to 4.7%. So you can see what an extraordinary effect Amazon's arrival in any business does. Gold, my goodness, the stalwart tweeted early this morning, and I think we were at 13.10. We're now at 13.25. This is another key level to the upside. It looks very, very strong. Triple leverage got bullish about oil when it was at $46.77. It's now at $47.02. We're going to bounce a little bit here. We're oversold. We've had a big dollar sell-off. I think we're going to see a push higher for crude oil, but we remain in a very bearish overall picture. How to pick the best chocolate bar your money can buy. A craft chocolate bar means the maker absolutely starts with whole beans and turns them into chocolate themselves. No remelting of couverture allowed, Giller said in an interview. Indian rape guru Ram Rahim Singh was jailed for 10 years. Extraordinary fellow. And let's move on to Africa. Angola's two main opposition parties reject the election results. Southern African nation's second biggest opposition party, the Broad Consensus for Angola Salvation Electoral Coalition, known as CASAC, said in an email statement that the vote count lacked transparency and wasn't based on reliable information. Its refusal to accept the outcome came after the biggest opposition party, UNITA, said August 26 that it didn't consider the provisional results valid. The ruling MPLA won 61% of the ballots counted last week, paving the way for its candidate João Lourenço to become president, according to the Electoral Commission. The Commission said you need to obtain 27% of the vote, while CASAC got 9.5%. About 2% of the votes have yet to be counted. Angola has started talks with banks for a $2 billion Eurobond sale. Government is yet to choose banks to lead the deal. Angola's economic growth fell to zero last year after averaging almost 9% in the previous 15 years. Kwanza has sunk 42% against the US currency since the crash in crude oil prices in 2014, but is still overvalued and may be weakened by another 20% by the end of 2018, which could make foreign debt more expensive. That's BMI research. Angola last sold Eurobonds in 2015 when it raised $1.5 billion of 10-year securities. The yield rose 1 basis point to 8.35%. That's given investors a 17% return this year, more than double the 8.2% average for emerging market dollar bonds. Interesting report in the FT, Chinese return from Africa as migrant population peaks from 1 million in 2013. The number of Chinese in the continent is in decline, analysts say. The volume of Chinese returnees, 150,000, are estimated to have left oil-rich Angola in the past 4 years alone, means that the Chinese population in Africa is now in decline from a peak of 1 million in 2013. Seychelles was the only African country that had a national budget surplus in 2016. South African oil share up 11.65% year-to-date, just shy of a record which it achieved last week. Dollar versus rand, last time I looked, 13.0702. I'm getting more constructive on the rand on the basis that I think President Zuma is in the departure lounge. And when he departs, it's going to be very difficult to pile in. It's time to start nibbling, as it were. Egyptian pound, 17.6580. Nigerian oil share up 35.14% year-to-date. Ghana Stock Exchange up 38.81% year-to-date. The Kenyan opposition says the electoral body is denying access to servers. Kenya's main opposition party said the electoral authority failed to heed a court order allowing scrutiny of the body's computer servers as it seeks to prove this month's presidential election was rigged. Members of NASA waited at the IEBC's offices until at least 3:30 a.m. on Tuesday morning to access the servers, coalition spokesman Dennis Onyango said by text message. The authority has provided less than 1% of what the court ordered the authority to allow the opposition to access, he said. The Supreme Court ordered on Monday that the Alliance submit a report on its scrutiny of the servers by 5 p.m. on Tuesday. IEBC spokesman Andrew Limo didn't answer his mobile phone when Bloomberg called him seeking comment. It's a fishing expedition and there is no apparent smoking gun. This is a photograph of the Kenyan Supreme Court judges as they arrive for a hearing of this petition. Central Bank Kenya says in its annual supervisory report that 12 of the 43 lenders violated the Banking Act and CBK prudential guidelines. Have a look at that link if you're interested. Jubilee Holdings reported first half earnings per share accelerated 23.168% higher. Gross earned premium was up 14.5% to 15.6 billion. Claims and policyholders' benefits payable surged by 38.695%. I did not know what caused that. Net fair value gain through profit or loss was up 455%. And that's all about the better price structure around listed assets and unlisted assets, of which Jubilee has a big portion. Investment income was 3.396 billion shillings. Operating profit was 1.76 billion versus 1.37 billion last time. Net profit up 18.839%. Earnings per share was up 23.168% at 26 shillings and 5 cents. Keeps the forward PE below 10, implied forward PE. Quoted equity investments at fair value through profit and loss, 5.95 billion. Total assets topped 100 billion for the first time, 101.108 billion. Cash and cash equivalents at the end of the period was 9.872 billion, so they're liquid. They're paying an interim dividend about which everyone's grumbling about. They're paying a shilling on an EPS of 26 shillings and 5 cents. Look, these were strong first half earnings lifted by an uplift in Kenyan asset prices, and that uplift has gotten more traction since these results were announced. Sanlam also reported first half earnings per share was up 169.663%. And before you get carried away, that was off a negative result the previous first half. So they were lapping a very weak first half. Gross premium income was 3.36 billion, up 27.4%. Investment income was 1.2 billion. Fair value gains was up 231%. Total income up 18.775%. but gross benefits and claims paid was up 21.327%. Operating and other expenses up a whopping 33.228%. Total expenses up 10.15%. Profit before tax 152.524 versus a loss of 144.726 million the previous time. They reported a positive earnings per share of 62 cents versus a loss of 89 cents last time. Held to maturity financial assets 9.4 billion. Total assets up 6.488% to 29.811 billion. Cash resources at the end of the year was down 13.839% to 3.04 billion. They had some accompanying commentary. Total assets up 5%. Group embedded value increased to 5.2 billion, up 10.3% over 6 months, they say. The main regulatory development in the insurance sector was the gazettement of the Statute Law Act 2017, postponing the effective date of complying with the new capital requirements to June 2020. Life insurance gross written premiums increased by 1% to 2.3 billion. Investment portfolio earnings increased by 20% to 1.4 billion, driven by higher revaluation gains, and we've seen more momentum behind that revaluation. Life insurance business operating profit 259 million versus 106 million in 2016, so significantly better. They also said gross written premiums grew by 225%. Loss ratio in the first half was within expectations but slightly above the comparable period due to a higher claims experience in the medical line of business. Operating expenses were negatively affected by an increase in bad debt provisions. The integration of PineBridge into Sanlam Emerging Asset Management has commenced, they say. Look, they're making progress, but it remains rich on a classic PE ratio basis. As other African countries ban donkey slaughter, Kenya doubles down to meet Chinese demand. Twice a month, Julius Yebe, 45, embarks on a 3-day journey by foot with a herd of donkeys from a livestock market in Bomet County to Goldox, a donkey slaughterhouse located in the semi-arid Kenyan county of Baringo. $6 million Chinese-owned donkey export slaughterhouse is one of 3 to open in Kenya in the last 18 months. Since the opening of the abattoirs, which process hundreds of donkeys a day, the price of an adult donkey in the country has soared to between $90 and $130 from $40 in less than 2 years. Yebe's twice monthly trek, herding 15 donkeys at a time, is a ritual he's become accustomed to since the abattoir opened last year. It's also become his primary source of income. Let me put up a photograph of the wild donkeys on the road to Lake Magadi and another one of the hot springs in Lake Magadi. Kenya shilling, which dipped below 103 yesterday, is lost at 103.20. Nairobi all share rose 0.67% yesterday to close at a 29-month high, and it's up 13.1% year to date. Safaricom closed at a fresh record of 26.75. That served up a total return of 44.75% so far this year. Standard Chartered closed at a 2017 high. That served up a 37.03% total return in 2017. Pynchon has matched a 2017 closing high. That's up 70.68% so far this year. East African Cables reported a first half earnings per share loss of 76 cents a share. Turnover slumped 30% to 1.47 billion. They made a loss of 221 million versus a small profit of 7.699 million last time. Interest expense up 10.773%. Loss before tax 331.806 million versus a 46.198 million loss last time. EPS was negative 76 cents versus negative 1 cent last time. No interim dividend. They also announced the resignation of their CEO, Peter Arena, which they say they've accepted. They said East African Cable's contracted business grew 11%, buoyed by regional electrification projects and the group's strategic focus to utilize installed capacity in our aluminium plant. However, the non-contracted business segment experienced a 30% drop in revenues, hampered greatly by continued constraint in accessing working capital lines. The company continues to pursue innovative financing structures in line with the comprehensive capital restructure program that is underway to address the working capital gaps. Very soft first half. It's been soft for quite a while. NSE 20, that was up 0.49% yesterday. That's up 28.33% year to date. And with that, I shall take my leave.